First, let me start with a question. You guys remember Encyclopedia Brown? Just ring some bells. Remember Encyclopedia? His friend Sally Kimball, right? They had their own detective agency, right? Solved mysteries for kids in the neighborhood and usually foiled the plans of Bugs Meany. Remember that guy and his tigers? I loved those books as a kid. Absolutely loved them. And as I think back, I've started to realize that those stories, you remember the stories, right? There'd be 8 or 10 in a book, and it'd be the mystery, and you could either try to solve or to go to the end and then read the clues, read the answer for yourself. I realized that those stories really sparked my own curiosity, my own interest in, solving puzzles and mysteries and just trying to figure out how things worked. It just really fueled my own curiosity. Now, I have to tell you that my experiences, my adventures didn't turn out so well as encyclopedias. So I remember in the 4th grade, one of my friends and I decided we were going to start a bike repair shop. Right? We're going to take bikes apart, we're going to fix them, and we'll make some money. Yes, genius, right? Genius. What could go wrong? Well, we figured out the first thing we needed to know was how to take bikes apart. So let's take your bike apart. We did it. Let's take my bike apart. We did it. We got this, right? High fives all around. And then we realized that we did not know how to put bikes back together. We were total and complete failures at that, much to my mom's dismay. But, what are you going to do? We wanted to see what we could do, and we saw that what we couldn't do. Later that same year, I remember going outside to play, see a couple of the older boys in the neighborhood were outside playing with what looked like some kind of souped up, super awesome BB gun. Now, I had a BB gun. I knew what they, how they worked and what they looked like, but I knew that wasn't a BB gun, and I needed to go figure out what that was. So, I hop on down the street. Hey, guys, what is that? It's an air rifle. Now, my 9-year-old brain hears this and is thinking, air rifle? You mean a rifle that shoots air? I wonder what that feels like. So then my 9-year-old mouth proceeds to say, an air rifle? You mean a rifle that shoots air? Oh, what's that feel like? Like, well, put your hand in front. We'll show you. You know where this is going. Now, in their defense, I have to say I can only imagine they were thinking I couldn't be that stupid to put my hand in front of what was a pellet gun. But they grossly overestimated my own common sense. So I put my hand in front of it, they pump it up, pull the trigger, pow! Like, ow! And it just stung. It was just a pellet gun, right? Just a compressed air powered pellet gun. It feels like, if you pound your fist into your hand, that's what it feels like. Ow! Then I look up and I see blood gushing out of my hand, and then I go into freak out mode. Right? I've been shot. Mama, I'm running home. Mama, they shot me. I've been shot. She goes into mom freak out mode. Don't get that on the carpet. Put a dish towel around it, jump in the car, we head to the emergency room. Now, I don't know exactly what went through my mom's head as she's driving her knuckle-headed son to the emergency room, and not for the first time, right, through his own stupidity. But I do recall that at some point over that adventure, she mentioned yet again how curiosity killed the cat. You guys have heard this? We're thinking, well, okay, that's whatever, because I'm not a cat. So, yeah, whatever, Mom. And I managed to escape my adventures basically just some bumps and bruises. But the reason I bring that up is that curious and knuckle-headed kid grew up to be a just as curious and sometimes just as knuckle-headed adult. And one of the things that I've been just fascinated by over the last 10 years or so is innovation. How it works, how it drives people, what gets in the way of it. And that's really what I want to share with you today. Is some of the things I've learned over the last 10 years, both as an internal innovation practitioner at large companies and as an external innovation consultant. So some of the things that can inhibit both individual and organizational innovation. So can you dig it? Is that what you're here for? You guys in the right place? Cool. All right, well, let's move on. First of all, innovation. I want to talk about let's have a shared definition to get started, because there are lots of different ways to define this. The definition that I prefer, the one that resonates the most with me, is this one. It is people implementing new ideas that create value. Pretty simple, to the point. Yeah? Does this work for you? For me, the reason I like it so much is the first word, is because it starts with people. Right? Ideas don't just fall from the sky like manna from heaven. Right? It's people having these, but not just having ideas, implementing them. And not just implementing any ideas, but ideas that create value. If you don't have all three of those, then, at least for me, it's not innovation. But what that is, that's really talking about actions and behaviors, or what I call practices. It's things you do. It's not what you think or what you know, it's what you actually do that's what matters. So for me, innovation is really a combination of these practices as well as leadership and culture. Culture and leadership, these things are all intertwined, and we'll unpack some of these as we continue on. But for me, I just wanted to set the ground in terms of when I talk about innovation, these are the things I talk about, really on the people side. So in my experience, it seems that every organization, everybody is sprinting toward this idea of innovation. Innovation will save them somehow, that's a goal. We should be doing that. And that's great, but there seem to be some rather common barriers to innovation, to people implementing new ideas that create value. So I just want to share 5 of those with you today. How many?
5.
Paying attention, excellent. Just 5. As well as 5 things you can do about those. 5 actions you can take. Because again, for me, it's about action, about what you do, not what you know. So barrier number 1, fear. Good old-fashioned, in the gut, fear. Now, fear in itself is neither a good thing nor a bad thing, right? It's just part of who we are as human beings, right? It's part of the prize package. I mean, it's hardwired into us. And the reason for that is because it's a self-preservation mechanism, right? That's the reason we become afraid of them. At least that's the reason why we should become afraid of things. You know, because back in the day, if you weren't smart enough to be afraid of things that could kill you, well, you know, we needed you out of the gene pool. We didn't want you to create more people like you, right? Now, hopefully, none of you guys live and work in a life and death environment. But there are still things, especially at work, but beyond work as well, there are still things that we are afraid of, things that frighten us deeply. And they inhibit us from doing things. They can keep us from doing these things that we call innovative. What do you think they are? Top 3. Public speaking is one. No. Failure. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of rejection. And they're all tied in together. Because it's still self-preservation. Right? Fear of the unknown. I'm not sure where this is going. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. And if I'm not sure what's going to happen, I might fail. I might screw it up. And if I screw it up, I definitely don't want to do that in front of my peers, my colleagues, my family, my boss. Those fears keep us from doing the things that we say we want to do. Right? And what it can lead to is this, it can lead us to being over-cautious. Again, fear is a good thing. Fear is a good thing. We should be afraid of the unknown. We should be afraid of failure. We should be afraid of rejection. But there are degrees. But what can happen if we let that fear overtake us, if we let it overwhelm us, we can get overly cautious. And how it shows up, how it manifests itself is in what I call a play it safe mentality. Right? It's better to not do anything than to do something and screw it up. Right? It's better to miss the boat than to sink the boat. The other correlator to that is that a get it right the first time mentality. Right? If we're afraid of getting it wrong, then by God, whatever you do, it better be right. And it better be right out of the gate. So if that's the mentality that can take place in a person and in an organization, well, that's okay, but you're not going to be very innovative. Right? Because innovation is about failure. It's about trying stuff, figuring out what works and what doesn't. So the interesting thing is those are learned behaviors. And do you know where we learned them? Here. How many of you guys went to grade school? Just show of hands. So, everybody, okay. What kind of stuff did you learn in grade school? Like early elementary, ABCs, what else? Math, right? So there's all that curriculum stuff. What else did you learn? What about the behavioral stuff, right? Following the rules, right? Don't hit the kid beside you. At least don't hit him while the teacher's looking at you, right? Figure out there are ways to do it. But there are other things we learned. There are other things we learned in that environment that weren't part of the curriculum, but by God, we learned them, and we learned them well. And so I can tell you a little bit more about that, but I actually want to show you a clip from a guy named Sir Ken Robinson. You guys familiar? Any of you familiar with Sir Ken? Phenomenal speaker and author, and his focus is on creativity and education. And he has a TED Talk that just on TED.com, it's north of 17 million views. But he's also just an excellent storyteller. So instead of me sharing this story, let's let Sir Ken himself share it. And then I want to get your thoughts. Right? Does that sound true? Yeah, very much so. And I love this line that if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never create anything original. And that may be okay. You may not need to create anything original. You may be in an operational road. You may be an operational company. You just want to keep doing what you're doing because it works. Then by all means, keep doing that. Don't try new stuff. But we'll talk a little bit later on about that's a risky proposition in itself. But here's the thing. So you guys agree with this. Does this make sense? So then let's just agree that we'll all be creative. We'll all be willing to be wrong. Will that do it? You think that's all we need to do? Some guy you've never seen before say, all right, it's okay to make mistakes and screw up and be an idiot. Who's in? I don't think so. Because here's why. Again, we talked about learned behaviors. We didn't want to be this guy then. We really don't want to be this guy now. Right? This is baked in. These are cultural and social norms. We don't want to be that guy. At least most of us don't. Right? Most of us don't. So the question then becomes, what should we do? What should we actually do? Again, it's not what we know, it's what we're going to do. Well, we could take a note from this guy. For those of you who aren't familiar, Dave Grohl, lead singer, guitarist with the Foo Fighters, but previously was the drummer for the band Nirvana. They were huge, right, global, just, they were tearing things up, and then their singer, Kurt Cobain, killed himself. So this is a clip from a Foo Fighters documentary talking about Dave saying, well, then what am I supposed to do? Check it out. So, what should we do? Well, we could follow Dave's lead and we'll just form a kick-ass rock band. That's what we should do. Yeah? Who's in? Alternatively, another option would be to create what I call fail-safe environments. Environments where it's safe to fail. Environments you can create for yourself, but especially if you work with others. Environments that you can create with and for your colleagues, people who work for you. Space, it's a sandbox. Space where it's okay to screw up, where it's okay to explore, where it's okay to find out what doesn't work. And it's critical because that's how we start to overcome that inborn fear of, the self-preservation stuff. That it's okay, that I'll still make it, I'll still be here if I screw this up. So in most organizations that I've been a part of and that I've worked with as a consultant, and the larger, the more this is true, is people get locked into this plan, execute, measure cycle. Plan, execute, measure, not necessarily always those three boxes, not always in that order. Right? Sometimes it's ready, right? Ready, fire, aim, but still, we get locked into this. And again, this is not necessarily a bad thing if all you need to do is just execute what you know already works. Right? If you're in an operations environment or manufacturing widgets, we know how to do widgets, we just need to make them all the same way, the same quality all the time, then do this. But if you need to figure out what else, or something different, or find out something new, then what you need to do is to build in some time and space within that cycle to test, to try stuff, to learn, and to refine it. Right? Now we can say this, but it's not going to work unless you actually build it into the schedule, if it's a scheduled thing, or if you build it into that culture, if you build it into that environment, that you make it safe to try stuff. That try it, if it doesn't work, then at least we know what didn't work. And we're that much closer to finding out what does. Okay? Burt Rutan is the guy who, his X1 company they won the X Prize, right? Manned space flight, manned spacecraft by a civilian. Love this line. Testing leads to failure, failure leads to understanding. If we redefine failure as learning, then we're all for it. Right? We all want to learn stuff. Failing, not so much. Learning, yeah, count me in. So we just have to, it's how we look at it. Something, my guess, those of you who are deep in the technology world, creating solutions, creating software, creating applications, are very familiar with this, maybe in a different way, but these concepts around bringing ideas to life, with this idea of sketching to rapid prototyping to experimenting. The idea of sketching, it's low fidelity. I'm talking literally pencil and paper type stuff. What about this? Nope, throw it away. What about this? Nope, throw it away. Erase this, change this. Right? You can do it fast, you can do it cheap. Then you can move on to the rapid prototyping. A little bit higher fidelity, a little bit more time and expense. But it's still not necessarily real, right? This is the click dummies. It's not, we haven't actually coded anything yet. And then experimenting, well, maybe we put this in front of our customers. Maybe it's just a few of them. Maybe we find some, again, we carve out a space that it's safe for it not to be perfect. The thing is, you can apply the same approach, the same framework to all parts of your business, not just the creating solutions part. You want to try something different? Well, let's sketch it out. If we can prototype it in some way, create some visual representation of it, do so. Get some feedback, Then go a little bit further. And you might even go into the customer-facing part of your world. Right? But you can do this, and it's a cycle. It's a way to create an environment where it's safe to fail. Very quickly, some of the value of doing this, and this goes back to addressing those fears. If what you're looking to do there, it's not obvious and there are multiple potential paths, the prototype, the sketching, prototyping, and experimenting will allow you to test multiple paths as opposed to marrying one idea too early. We could do A, B, or C. We'll try all three a little bit further before you have to make a decision. It helps you make decisions more safely. The fact that the visual representations, you can make more clarity and then shared understanding, which is critical, as opposed to just using words. How many of you have gotten a spec document that's just nothing but text? Right? Good luck with coming out the other end with it being exactly what they wanted. Right? The earlier you can get visual, the better you can get that shared understanding. Oh, that's what you want. Got it. Getting rich feedback from your stakeholders early and often is critical. And then the fact by doing this, it accelerates learning. Learn faster. Learn what doesn't work as quickly and cheaply as you possibly can. All right, so barrier number 2. I'm going to fly through these next few. Because fear is pretty obvious. These next couple not so obvious. Number 2 is success. Success can be a barrier to innovation. When you think about it, it does make sense. Why? Because if something's working, well, keep doing it. Don't change. Right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. However, there is another way to look at this, and I think Jack Welch has a great line here. It says, change before you have to. Change before you have to. And for me, there's no better example than these guys. Show of hands, how many of you used to have a Blockbuster card? How many of you still have a Blockbuster card? You're the one. Now, what happened? Did Blockbuster start sucking at renting videos in stores? Did they get terrible at that? No. They actually, there's a verb for it now. They got Netflixed. Right? Somebody figured out a better mousetrap. While Blockbuster is still like, hey, what if we did the shelves this way? Right? They're done. They are done. So what can we do differently here? Again, something in the software world I know you already do, but think about how you apply it more broadly. Is you perform wellness checks. How are we doing? Could we be doing better? And white hat hacking, right? Try to break it yourselves. Here's the overarching idea. Somebody is trying to put you out of business. It might as well be you. It might as well be you, because somebody's going to do it. Right? Everything we do today, no matter how well it works, has an expiration date. But it's usually not stamped where we can see it. It's usually after it's stopped working that we go, oh, crap, we got to, all hands on deck, figure out what we should do differently. Okay? You put yourself out. Number 3, again, one that's not so obvious. A focus on efficiency. Again, it's counterintuitive because, well, efficiency is a good thing, right? I mean, taking out waste, taking out non-value added time, taking out extra code, taking out expense, these are good things. And they are good things, but like any strength, they can be overplayed. You can turn that dial too far. Right? You can over-tighten it. And specifically, the impact that that focus on efficiency can have on people. Right? It's the human impact. It's the people part of innovation. Because what happens, and I've seen this time and time again, and some of you have lived in this environment, or some of you may be living in it now. We get so busy doing the work, there's no time to do anything other than doing the work. Which, again, may be okay if you know that what you're doing today is exactly what you need to be doing, it's what you ought to be doing tomorrow, and just do it better, faster, cheaper. But if you need to figure out other ways to do things, well, you got to build in some wiggle room. You've got to build in some exploration time. Some time to learn, some time to play, some time to fail, some time to think. You have to do that. Nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. Quick tip here, quick office tip. One way to build in just these minute times to think is when you schedule meetings, how do you do it? You do it with software, with your calendaring tool? Are they typically either 30 or 60-minute meetings? Are those the default settings? If they are, then why are you letting some software company dictate your calendar? What I would encourage you to do is have 25 and 50-minute meetings. Yeah, it's an extra step to go in and do it, but you'll be amazed at what can happen. You'll be amazed. Try it. 25 and 50-minute meetings. You'll see what will happen. It's not easy. It's easy to say. It's not so easy to actually do and do consistently. 4th barrier, the myth of the lone genius. The myth of there are this mythology around creativity and innovation and scientific breakthroughs that, is that one person in the lab, the one person, hunkered over their computer that had I've got it. The apple falls on the head sort of thing. I know what the answer is. I know what we should do. Oh, we rain praise on them and think, wow, you're a genius. Thanks for doing that for the rest of us. But those stories are actually really rare in that it's more about what happens when you collaborate. That's where true innovation happens, where you can do it consistently, is when you do it together. I say that innovation is a team sport, and it very much is. And it's collaborating both internally and externally. As much as you can internally, and it's also about making it, but not just, hey, let's get together and talk and work or do whatever. That's not enough. It has to be meaningful to be effective. So I'm going to give you 3 things to make collaboration meaningful and effective. Again, whether it's internal or external. The first is diversity of thought. If you're constantly talking to the same people and they all think the same way, you're really wasting your time. You should just go alone and just do what you were going to do. It's this range of differences that matters, and it matters a lot. You have to get beyond the usual suspects. You have to get people that have different perspectives, different opinions, different backgrounds about whatever it is you're trying to solve. Because if everybody's thinking the same, it's going to be really, really hard to come up with something different. There's a quote that I love here that I want to share with you. It's, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Which one is better? Neither. You need both. You need expertise, but you also need some non-experts. The people that don't know what dumb questions not to ask. That's where you get those breaks. They're like, oh, well, actually, now that you ask that, I don't know why we do this way. Is there another way? Right? That's where those breakthroughs start to happen, especially when you can do it collaboratively. Something else you need is freedom of dissent. You need freedom to disagree. I said innovation is a team sport. It's also a contact sport. It's also a contact sport. You have to be able to disagree. How many of you are Southerners? The rest, transplants? All of you, my guess, are familiar, especially with the transplant. You've heard the phrase, bless your heart? That's Southern for you're an idiot. Right? Oh, bless your heart. It's nice of saying, what a knucklehead. Right? Well, we don't want bless your heart sort of collaboration. We went, I don't think that's going to work, and here's why I think that. I mean, we need to have that sort of give and take, and we have to be able to be honest with each other to do it, or creative abrasion. Pixar has a process they call the dailies, which I just absolutely love. I think it's a phenomenal practice. My guess, some of you guys may do that already, but you may could do it more, may do it more effectively. But in their dailies process, when they're going through the grind of making an animated movie, saying their animators in a full day's work might create 1.5 seconds, maybe 2 seconds worth of film, of footage. And what they do, they'll start off the next morning with, all right, let's get together, animators, show what you did yesterday. And then they rip it apart. They rip it apart. The reason being, there's a couple of things, a couple of benefits from it. One is that it reduces the fear of showing incomplete work. Some of us, some of you, I'll show it to you when I'm ready to show it to you, when it's right, when it's good, when it's done. Okay, the problem is that that takes time. And then what if we don't like it? So what these guys have figured out is show me every day. What are you doing? And then the directors can weigh in and their peers can weigh in like, not so much. Ooh, I love that. Do more of that. Let's go that direction. Hey, everybody, we're going to go this direction now, not that, which we changed. But by doing this daily, as a daily practice, it starts to reduce that fear. It's safe to, you know what, here's what I did yesterday. What do you think? But there's also a competitive element. I mean, you don't want to be the guy whose stuff is awful every day, right? I mean, you got to raise your game. And then for the directors, for the manager of the game, there's no surprises. They're not going to wait. Well, show me 30 days from now what you got, and we'll decide from there. Show me tomorrow. Show me tomorrow. Let's see what happens. And then the third piece of this is time and space to work individually before we work together. One of the things here, and time and space is key, is to make room for your introverts. My guess, some of you are perfectly fine with thinking out loud. I'm one of those people. Unfortunately, when you get one or more of those people in a room, they tend to take up all the oxygen. And the people who just feel more comfortable thinking through and have a fully articulated thought before they open their mouths, they get discounted, they get pushed to the side. Well, if you had something to say, you'd say it. Well, maybe not. Stephen King has a great line here that works for him in writing. I'm not saying this should be a practice you do, but it's something to consider, especially if you're one of the think out loud folks. For him, he says, write with the door closed, rewrite with the door open. Let me get my thoughts together first, and then I can share it with you. Right? Let me at least put something down versus, all right, let's just come to the blank sheet of paper. All right, what do you guys think we should do? All right, number 5. This might be the biggest one. I call it frames. How you see the world. And it's really a couple things. It's not only what we see, it's also where we look. So the what we see bit, well, I'll see you test it for yourself.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13.
Yeah? Good job.
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Not a trick, he was there the whole time. I mean, you can go to YouTube and check it out for yourself. This was a public service announcement in the UK for drivers to look out for cyclists. And it's really about how our vision systems works. It's not just what comes in here gets input here. This is just one input. Another factor in terms of what you actually see in your mind's eye is what you were looking for, what you were expecting to see. And if you weren't expecting to see something, there's a good chance you might not actually see it. Or in terms of driving and cyclists or pedestrians, you may not see it until it's too late. The police actually have a category or coding for when cars hit pedestrians. They call it looked but didn't see. It happens that often because it's whoa, where'd that guy come from? Well, I didn't see him because I wasn't looking for him. Same thing goes for innovation efforts. It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. So what do? You have to figure out what am I not seeing and how do I go look for it? Again, easier to say, not as easy to do. The second piece is where we look. Where we actually focus our attention matters. A great story, last story I want to share with you. It's about this guy, Attila the accountant. Not his real name. But Attila the accountant was the accounting manager for Department of Youth Services in Massachusetts in the late 70s. And his organization provided services directly to children going through the juvenile justice system. But Attila, as the accounting manager, he was just this tired. He was a yeller, he was an in-your-face sort of guy, but he was tired about expense reports, but anything paperwork. He wanted every single detail right before he'd even consider it. So if you missed a date, if you missed a subtotal, he told his team, reject the expense report out of hand, tell them to get it all right, and then send it back in, and then we'll consider it. Well, unfortunately, and he said, well, you know, that's the way a good accountant should work. That's how we run a tight ship. It's like, you know, I'm sorry if you don't like it, well, do better next time. Okay, well, what happened? Their business model changed. Instead of providing services directly, DYS started working more with vendors. So they were working with counseling centers and folks like that who were providing services to their audience. And then they were asking for reimbursement. DYS would then reimburse their vendors. Except Attila's like, nope, sorry, they got to be exactly right or they get nothing. What he didn't appreciate, and the social workers and the other folks with DOS trying to explain to him, is that you don't understand. If these guys don't get expensed, they don't get their reimbursement in a timely fashion, they need it now. They may not make payroll. They can't buy food. You know, they're going to have to skip trips taking some of these students, some of these kids to doctors because they don't have the money to do it. It's like, sorry, you know, this is how you run an accounting department. Well, what are we going to do? How do we get this guy to change his mind? Well, what they did is got him to change where he looked. They took him with him. They took Attila with them to visit some of these sites so he could see it for himself. That these guys aren't working in nice, quiet offices with the doors closed where they can fill out their report. I mean, they're doing 5 things at once. The phone's ringing. They got kids in and out. They're trying to do other stuff. It was a mess. There was a lot going on. And then they expressed to him about, you know, you see what these guys have to deal with. And then us not getting them their money in a timely fashion causes problems. They can't do what we actually want them to do, what we're hiring them to do. So Attila went back a changed man. Well, he was still a yeller and an authoritarian, but what he was doing was telling us, hey, we got to get this money back out quick. We got to get this out because people are counting on us. What happened is they changed where he saw. That's what then helped him change his own perceptions of what he needed to do to help him change his behavior, his practices. The line here is this, is what we see shapes how we change, where we look shapes what we see. So what should we do differently around the frames is that we need to identify and challenge the frames that we use, the frames that we look through. We have to challenge those. Ask ourselves, is there another way to look at this? Is there another is there somewhere I'm not looking? Are there things I'm not seeing that can help me come up with either new ideas or better ideas about what it is we're trying to do? I think, Jason, I think of the story you were telling me with Erica and one of your clients, but let's go and do these ride-alongs. What are they actually doing? Faster Glass, we call it, what's the reality of the customer? Voice of the customer is not enough. What do they actually do that they may not even be able to tell us, that they can articulate? Let me go and see for myself and let that inform our solution development. It's a big thing. All right, so let me wrap up. We talked about 5 barriers. And we've got a handout for this. For those of you who are scribbling, I probably should have mentioned that earlier. For those of you who are scribbling furiously, my bad. And also, Jason will send this out electronically, both the handout and the deck itself. But we talked about 5 barriers. We talked about 5 things we can do differently. But here's the key takeaway for you. It's this. Knowledge doesn't change behavior. Full stop. Knowledge doesn't change behavior. So my question for you, your takeaway is, so what are you going to do now? What are you going to do differently, if anything, on what I've shared with you today? Because at the end of the day, you actually don't have to change. You can keep doing what you're doing the way you're doing it. That is an option. Okay, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You just might not like the consequences. I hope this was a good use of your time, and I appreciate you letting me be here today. All right. So Josh, do we have time for questions? What do we do next? Okay. So what questions might you have? Yes, sir.
How hard is it to change a culture inside a company that's looking at innovation the wrong way? Like, was that your biggest challenge, is getting them to completely switch their
It's not easy. If it were easy, everybody would already be doing it. A lot of it depends on the mindset of leadership and how important is it, and then at what point in their evolution are they? Are they in, holy crap, what we're doing is absolutely not working, you know, pants on fire, we have to change? Or is it, well, things are okay. You know, the more progressive leaders are realizing, yeah, but there's an expiration date. We need to change before we have to. So a lot of it depends. And then it's just a matter of what approaches and what strategy and what techniques you use. There's a lot of change management stuff to then get everybody in a sense where they want to paint the fence. Right? There's this adage that, well, people don't like change. Well, I don't think that's true. I mean, how many of you have gotten married voluntarily? Or you've had children voluntarily? Or you've changed jobs or changed houses voluntarily? And those are big changes, I think. So the idea we don't like change is actually not entirely true. We don't like change forced upon us. Don't change me, man. Right? But I'll be willing to change on my own. So for that culture piece, it's about how do we get people to want to do that, and then it's get out of their way. So, question?
There are strategies to tell, like, people who actually want to change versus people who just say they want to change. Like people who say they want to be innovative, but they really don't want it. Like, is there strategies to kind of filter that out?
It's a good question. Some of it, yeah, it is figuring out which ones really want to do this and which ones are just, well, this is what I need to say this week. And the unfortunate reality is sometimes there needs to become, all right, are you with me or are you not? It's A or B. You know, it's a binary decision. And then then the hard decisions have to be made. But my experience is that one of the best ways to make that happen is to, what do you want to do? You know, how do you want to roll? How do you want to work? How do you want to live? If you want to live like this, you want to live like this. You want to work here or work here. And when it's your idea, when it's their idea, people are generally more inclined to follow along versus, you know, you have to do this. So, and I'm not sure if that's a helpful answer, but the bigger answer is it kind of depends. One more?
Yeah, so a lot of this seems to depend on trade-offs, right? Like you mentioned that that innovation is frequently less efficient than not being innovative, right? How do you determine how far you move into something that's got a detrimental trade-off like that?
That's a great question, because you can, hey, let's do everything new and we'll just take a big chance, and then the bottom fall out, right? They don't make documentaries about guys who had crappy bands, right? At least I don't think they do. Maybe they do. I haven't seen them. It absolutely is a balance. And there is this operational piece. What do we have to do and do well and do consistently to to continue to have a future that we also need to be working on over here. And then how do you get those two parts, if you will, to be talking to one another? You know, there's some organizations that will completely separate the two. Here's operations, here's innovation. Some work, I don't think that's the best way. I think there has to be a connection between the two, a constant connection. These guys are informing these guys and vice versa. Roger Milliken, who founded Milliken Industries down in Spartanburg, old textile firm, and you know what happened to textiles in the Carolinas and in this country? Well, they are still going strong because they've really reinvented themselves a couple of times. They're a high-tech textile company now. But he had a quote that I absolutely love to your point, to your question. He says, operational excellence secures the present. Innovation excellence secures the future. And it's not an either or, it is an and. You have to do both, right? Just doing the operation stuff, if you do that, well, sometimes you may think that's all we need to do because I'm still here, we're making money, we're cash flow positive, those sorts of things. You may not realize the negative impact of not doing this until later. Maybe sometimes until it's too late. But it absolutely has to be both. And sometimes it's a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that, depending on where you are, what kind of project it is, and what have you. Yeah. All right.